Hi everyone. In this video, we are going to talk about OAuth, which is a widely used protocol for securing our application. So OAuth is a protocol that has evolved over the years to address the need for secure and controlled access to resources by any third-party applications. So let's first deep dive into history of OAuth. So OAuth 1.0a originally introduced in 2007. Then in 2009, one of the author of OAuth 1.0 started working on a simplified version called OAuth 2.0. OAuth 2.0 was introduced as an internal draft in 2010. In October 2012, OAuth 2.0 was published as RFC. In response to the concern, OAuth 2.0 was officially released in 2013, and from there it has been widely used and has evolved with ongoing discussion, improvement, and the implementation. So let's try to understand what does auth means in this OAuth word. So now auth does stand for two widely used security protocol. So does it stand for authentication or authorization? So the answer is auth stands for authorization in OAuth, and specifically it is mainly used for authorization between services. Now let's try to understand what is OAuth 2.0. As we have understood from history, this is the evolved version of OAuth, and it is the most widely used protocol in the securing our application in the industry today. So OAuth 2.0, as you have understood, Open Authorization 2.0 is an open standard and protocol for authorization. It is not meant for authentication. We will see how this will work between the services. It is widely used in modern applications and services to enable secure and controlled access to resources without exposing user credentials. It also provides a framework for allowing third-party application to obtain limited access to user data on behalf of the user, so while maintaining data security and user privacy. So let's try to see what are the key concepts of OAuth 2.0. So first we'll look at the roles. So there are multiple roles which are they present within the OAuth 2.0 flow. So first we'll talk about the resource owner. So the user who owns the data and grants permission for any third-party access, we call it as a resource owner. The application or service that wants to access user data, this we called as a client. The server that holds and manages user data, we call this as a resource server. The server that issues access token after user consent, we call them as a authorization server. Now let's talk about the access token. Specifically, we are talking about the JWT. So a token obtained by the client from the authorization server representing the permission granted by the user. And it is specifically designed in an encrypted format, and JWT is one of the most popular way of accessing this information using access token. So authorization grant, a credential representing the resource owner consent to allow the client to access their data. And if we talk about different type of grant, it can include authorization code, implicit, resource owner password credential, and client credential. Now if we talk about redirect URIs, so the callback URLs to which the user is redirected after granting or denying permission. Then we have a token endpoint, the server's endpoint where the client accesses the authorization code for an access token. And we also do have a concept of scope, which is about permission requested by the client during the authorization process. Now let's try to deep dive into architecture diagram. So first we will look at all the key components that are present in the OAuth. So first we have a resource owner, we have a browser which will where our client application is running. Then we have a resource server where our application service is running. And then we have an authorization server where our OAuth service is running. So first, any resource owner or user will go to the browser or client application to access the client application. Then client application will go to the authorization server to request for the access token. Then authorization server grant the issue or issues the access token back to the client application. Client application using this token, which is JWT, goes to the resource server to access or request for the resources. App service or resource server backs to the authorization server to validate whether this is a valid token or it is only generated by this authorization server where user has given a grant. Then authorization server responds back to the token validation and it verifies whether token is valid or not. And if the token is valid, then resource server returns all the resources to the client which have been requested. And in the last, browser will render the result back to the user. So this is how we have seen how OAuth 2.0 flow has worked from resource owner back to the resource server. Now we'll try to understand more with the analogy for OAuth 2.0. So there is a very common analogy of linked to a scenario involving a valet key for a car. So imagine you have a high-end car and you want to give a valet temporary access to park your car without giving away your main car key. So the valet key has limited functionality and can only be used to park and retrieve the car from a designated parking area. So in this analogy, if we see the car is the resource owner or the car owner or user, so you as the car owner are the resource owner, you own the car and its access right. Now we do have a client, we can call it as a valet. So the valet is the client representing the application or service that wants access to your car, which is again a resources. Now we have an authorization server or we can call it as a car owner's desk also. So before handing over the valet key, you visit the car owner's desk to grant a specific permission. You might say, the valet can park and retrieve my car, but cannot open the trunk or drive it outside the parking area. So now we'll get the access key, which is a valet key. So the valet key is the access token. It grants limited access to the car based on the permission you specified at the car owner's desk. The last, we have a resource server, which is again a parking area. So the parking area is the resource server. It holds your car and enforces the permission specified by the valet key. So the valet client can only perform actions allowed by the key. And as a user, you are the user, you have the authority to grant or revoke access permissions. So in this analogy, OAuth 2.0 operates similarly by allowing a client application to request access to a user, data or resources through the issuance of an access token. So just as the valet key provided limited access to the car, the access token provided control access to the specific resources without exposing any sensitive credentials. So let's try to understand what are the popular use cases of OAuth 2.0. So one of the most popular use cases is third-party application integration. So OAuth 2.0 allow third-party application like clients to access user data from various services like resource server on behalf of the user. For example, a fitness app can access a user health data from a health tracking service. Then the second most popular use case is single sign-on. So OAuth 2.0 can be used to implement single sign-on, allowing user to log in into once as an identity provider and then access multiple services without needing to authenticate it again. Then the third popular use case is social media login. So many websites and application after login with Facebook or similar option, OAuth 2.0 enable user to grant permission to a third party access to access their social media profile information. The fourth is the API access. So OAuth 2.0 is commonly used for securing access to APIs. For example, a mobile app might use OAuth 2.0 to access an API for fetching weather data or performing financial transactions. IoT device authorization. So IoT devices can use OAuth 2.0 to obtain access token and securely communicating with the cloud services, granting authorized access to device generated data. Then we have a cloud storage access. So OAuth 2.0 can also employ to allow application to access a user cloud storage. So such an example is Google Drive, Dropbox without requiring the user to share their login credential. And the last would be enterprise authorization. So in corporate environment, OAuth 2.0 can be used to manage authorization for internal application, ensuring that only authorized employee have access to certain resources. So there are many other use cases also. So we can cover that as well. So in conclusion, we can say that OAuth 2.0 is widely adopted as the de facto standard for authorization in various applications and services, enabling secure access to resources while maintaining user privacy and control. So, OpenIDC or OpenID Connect to address authentication alongside with authorization, the OIDC protocol was developed, and we will see or talk about OIDC in any other video. So that's all for this video, and I'll see you in next video. Thank you.